Call of Duty is a household name now. There's a good chance that even if someone has never played a video game before, they'll still recognize the name due to the enormous commercial success of the series, the huge amount of marketing, and the various controversies that made their way to news outlets. But every juggernaut has a beginning, an origin story of how they rose to the top. Call of Duty has been an ever-present mainstay in my gaming career ever since I realized I liked video games. Call of Duty 3 was the first game I bought when my parents got me and my siblings our first console, the Xbox 360, and Call of Duty 2 was the second game I bought. I've been playing Call of Duty in some form or fashion for over a decade now, but I haven't played some of the more recent ones like Black Ops 4, Cold War, or Vanguard. I just haven't felt the need to, despite playing every Call of Duty on release year after year. I don't think I'm the only one who's fallen off on Call of Duty either. Vanguard was one of the worst selling Call of Duty games in recent years, with many fans, including my own friends, finding it to be very underwhelming. But even before Vanguard, the conversation around the series has shifted over the years. So I've decided to look back at the franchise that defined so many of our teenage years and do a retrospective where I go through each game in the series. And of course, you have to start where it all began. Note that while I will be examining the multiplayer of each game if I can to some degree, I'm not a huge multiplayer guy, so my primary form of enjoyment with the series has always been the single player. That's not to say that I don't play the multiplayer. On the contrary, I think that I've put more hours into Call of Duty's multiplayer as a series than any other single game or series. Just don't expect in-depth examinations of maps or metas or the best guns to 360 no-scope some noob on Nuketown. Call of Duty was developed by Infinity Ward, a development team created by ex-Medal of Honor Allied Assault developers, who wanted to create a more realistic wargame experience by focusing Call of Duty on the efforts of groups of soldiers instead of the solo hero saving the day and winning battles on their own. This focus on larger group battles has persisted throughout the series in one way or another for the most part. Call of Duty Classic, which was a remaster of the first game, was included in the hardened and prestige editions of Modern Warfare 2, the original one, not the new one, but was also available for download on the 360 and PS3. I have played Classic a couple times, but for this review, I played the original PC version of the game for the first time. I played Call of Duty for one playthrough on normal difficulty. There really isn't much of a story to spoil, but I will talk about some of the levels in the game. Call of Duty hasn't exactly aged gracefully. The character models look funky and not in the James Brown kind of way, and they move funky too, again, not in the James Brown kind of way. The environmental textures aren't so hot either, but at least you can tell what everything's supposed to be. Realistic art styles will always have a harder time holding up than more artistic or unique art styles, and this game is old enough to drink, so I'm not really too stressed about it. In my opinion, a more fair way to talk about graphics with older games is to see if you can compare what other games that were released around the same time looked like, and by all accounts, Call of Duty looked good when it came out, and at the very least didn't look worse than some of its competitors like GTA Vice City or Splinter Cell. Still, even with the dated visuals, the game can still impress with some of its set-piece moments, like the first Russian level or the 2 car chases. I can only imagine how impressive these moments were back in the day. Call of Duty has often looked towards film and television for inspiration when it comes to portraying war. Infinity Ward even name drops Enemy at the Gates and Band of Brothers in interviews, just to make it apparent for anyone who hasn't seen either of those, like myself. The sound design is actually really good. The fierce firefights are loud and overwhelming with shouts of soldiers, the firing machine guns, the treads of tanks, and the bombs exploding. But it's also the little touches like the space that the outdoor levels have in the audio, the low rumblings and faint gunfire in the distance, the flange effect in close quarters, and the awesome shell-shocked moments where everything slows down and you get the weird sound effect followed by the high-pitched whistle bringing you out of it. The sound holds up shell-shockingly well in this game. The voice acting is decent, with a voice role from Jason Statham of all people. The score is fantastic, with lots of orchestration, high strings, and what I assume are trombones, as well as military-style percussion. The music really does bring to mind an old-timey war sound, if that makes sense, like it would feel completely at home in a World War II documentary. Melodic, chaotic, tense, intense, beautiful, sorrowful, triumphant. PC settings options are pretty bare bones, but I'm not sure what the standards were back in the day. I did have to go into the game files to change my resolution to what I wanted it to be for my screen, but it was relatively simple to do with a helpful YouTube tutorial. I did experience some weird frame rate hitches every once in a while, not sure what caused them, but that's the extent of any technical issues I encountered. Call of Duty doesn't really have an in-depth story with fleshed out characters. The game is more about experiencing World War II through the eyes of 3 different soldiers, an American, a British, and a Russian soldier respectively. Each soldier has their own set of missions that they play in sequence. For instance, you start as the American Private Martin and do his missions, then play as the British Sergeant Evans, and finally the Russian Corporal Alexei. There are some recurring characters like the first appearance of Captain Price, and while there are some moments that stand out in terms of character moments, like the first car chase sequence where you have to drive past enemy lines with 2 of your fellow American soldiers who show off quite a bit of personality in the mission, there's not much here to sink your teeth into in terms of narrative. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Call of Duty is clearly not trying to be a story-driven game. There are mission briefings before each set of missions that detail what your objectives are. There are diary entries on loading screens from the characters you play as that give us a peek into the thoughts of our silent protagonists, and there are quotes from various historical figures about war on the death screens. All of this sets the tone well for a wartime experience rather than a wartime story, if that makes sense. Call of Duty's gunplay has always been buttery smooth. It just feels good to shoot and aim in these games, which isn't something that every shooter gets right. But on its first try, Call of Duty is pretty successful for the most part. Aiming is very smooth, but some guns are harder to shoot than others on account of the amount of muzzle flash and recoil. It's a way to balance out guns with a high rate of fire, so if you're using a Tommy gun, you really need to get in close, otherwise you can't see anything when firing. Flinching is pretty exaggerated in the game. Whenever you're shot, your character flinches, throwing off your aim. This is presumably to encourage players to use cover smartly, instead of trying to run and gun. It can create scenarios where you can't really see what you're aiming at because of muzzle flash, and your aim gets thrown off because you're being shot, so close quarters combat can be occasionally frustrating. The Call of Duty series is well known for popularizing the recharging health system present in most modern shooters, along with Halo 2. However, the first game does not utilize that system. Instead, you need to find health packs throughout levels to heal yourself. Now, personally, I like both types of health systems, if they're used appropriately. For instance, I would say that recharging health systems work best for games with mostly hit-scan weapons, and health packs work best for games with projectile-based weapons. Let me explain what I mean. If enemies use hit-scan weapons in a game, it essentially means that whenever a shot is fired, it instantly hits you, leaving no way for you to dodge or avoid the attack. The Call of Duty series mainly uses hit-scan weapons with a recharging health system, which complement each other pretty well, because even though you can't avoid damage, you'll gain your health back in a few seconds. If enemies use projectile-based weapons, it essentially means that the projectile is a physical object in the game world that can be dodged or avoided. These are really simplified explanations, but I hope you get the picture. Doom Eternal uses mainly projectile-based weapons for the demons and uses health packs, which complement each other because theoretically you could avoid all incoming damage, so having regenerating health would make the game way too easy. Call of Duty 1 uses hit-scan weapons and health packs, which is not a great combination in my opinion. What this results in are many situations where you take unavoidable damage and have to either backtrack a lot to find a health pack, or just die over and over until you can manage to get past certain combat encounters. Again, this was probably done to try and make the player use cover, but there are many times when enemies will get the drop on you and shoot first, leaving you with no way to avoid damage, and if you get stuck in an area without any more health packs, it can be a real pain in the ass. Hit-scan weapons and health packs don't really make for an experience that feels very fair. It feels more like the game system is working against you. The big selling point for Call of Duty was the whole fight together thing, charging across the battlefield with your fellow soldiers, and for most of the game you do have NPC-friendly soldiers with you, fighting alongside you. They're not just set dressing either, they do pack a punch, killing their fair share of enemy NPCs, when they're not walking right past them and getting shot, or failing to shoot an enemy that's directly in front of them. The AI can be a little strange at times. Each of your friendlies has a name displayed above their head in either green, yellow, or red to represent how much health they have. Some of the names are fun little Easter eggs, like Private Zampella, named after Vince Zampella, one of the founders of Infinity Ward, or recurring characters like the aforementioned Captain Price or Sergeant Foley. You start to form a weird connection with your squad of named soldiers, trying to make sure that as many of them survive the level as possible. If you end up accidentally killing one of your guys, the game gives you a stern reminder that friendly fire will not be tolerated and restart you at your last checkpoint. GTA this is not. You have a decent array of World War II armaments, though not anywhere near as many guns as you would see in a more modern Call of Duty game. You got your Tommy guns, Colt pistol, M1 Garand, etc., the usual suspects for a World War II shooter. You can carry 2 primary guns plus a pistol and grenade. The grenade wasn't mapped to a button, so you have to equip it to use it, which is something I'm really glad shooters got rid of, as it just feels really clunky. There's no sprinting or mantling either. You keep your goddamn boots on the ground, son. You can crouch and even go prone, which is basically required to get past certain parts of the game on the hardest difficulty. There are a good amount of different levels. You get to fight through occupied French towns, reclaim the snowy Russian motherland, board a Nazi boat for some espionage, and claim victory at Berlin. There are a few levels that are reused, like you take control of the area during the day or night, and then have to hold off the Nazis trying to take it back the next day. I don't necessarily have an issue with this, however some of these levels feel kind of drawn out, and given that the game isn't that long, coming in under 8 hours, these levels can feel like padding. Call of Duty is well known for its scripted sequences that are pretty linear and really over the top, but there aren't too many of those present in the first iteration. There definitely are some scripted moments and plenty of linear levels, but there are also levels with more open areas that give you room to maneuver. The other big thing for the Call of Duty series is, of course, the multiplayer. Nowadays, Warzone dominates the franchise, but the multiplayer was much more simple in the beginning. I unfortunately never played the original game's multiplayer and wasn't able to play a real match for this review. Me and my brother just messed around a bit on a couple of the maps, so I don't have much to say on it. Kill cam was present in the first game, however, another staple of the franchise. In interviews from back in the day, Activision was already claiming that Call of Duty was going to be a brand, so they had big plans from the start. Infinity Ward had also mentioned moving away from World War II as well, and it's interesting to see with hindsight how both of these things came to fruition. But speaking specifically on the first game, I think it was pretty obvious that Infinity Ward had something special on their hands. A great presentation all around for the time, with fantastic audio design and a great score. Pair that with gameplay that has a few flaws that can cause frustration, but is mitigated by just how damn good the game feels to play. If you're a newer fan of the franchise or have never played the original, I would recommend it. If you enjoy the campaigns from Call of Duty. If you primarily or only play Call of Duty for the multiplayer, there's really nothing here for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there is a remaster, Call of Duty Classic, but it isn't backwards compatible, so the only way to play it is on the 360 or PS3. Personally, I would just get the game on Steam whenever there's a sale. I'm going to give Call of Duty a 7.5 out of 10. I'm pretty excited to start the Call of Duty retrospective. This is something my roommate's been bugging me about doing for a while because he loves Call of Duty, even though he's never played many of the older ones. And no, I have not forgotten about the Assassin's Creed retrospective. That one is pretty high on my priority list, it's just been delayed a lot longer than I intended for various reasons. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and commenting your thoughts on the game. Thanks for watching.